Okay, let's jump into something truly wild today.
Sounds good.
We're taking a deep dive into this really astonishing connection between your mind and, well, your physical body.
And not just in a general sense, right? We're
Right.
talking down to the cellular level.
Exactly, even down to your genes, potentially.
It's a space where, cutting-edge biology starts to meet concepts that feel, well, they feel almost ancient in a way.
Yeah. How your thoughts, your intentions might literally be shaping the processes inside you.
Mm-hmm.
And our listener sent in just a fantastic stack of material for this one. It covers like everything from the really well-established science on the mind-body link.
All the way to some pretty far-out speculative ideas.
Right, about using focused intention, visualization. Could that actually direct cellular renewal?
So our mission, really, in this deep dive is to unpack all of that. Pull out the core insights, look at the surprising facts.
And figure out how these sources are suggesting our minds could be these sort of inner architects, shaping our own biology.
A powerful idea.
Definitely. So where do we start? I guess with the basics, right? Your body isn't static.
Not at all. It's constantly renewing itself. Cells die, new ones are made, tissues get repaired. It's incredibly dynamic.
And the science is making it clearer and clearer that your mental state isn't just like watching this happen.
No, it's an active participant. And the key bridge here, according to the research we looked at, is the epigenome.
Okay, so DNA is the blueprint. We know that. The epigenome is
What?
like the foreman on the job site.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. Or maybe the project manager deciding which parts of the blueprint actually get used, when they get used, how much.
So it's not changing the blueprint itself, the DNA code.
No, not changing the sequence. It's more like adding instructions on top. Think sticky notes or highlights, maybe.
Or like dimmer switches for the genes.
Exactly. Dimmer switch is perfect. It uses chemical tags, things like DNA methylation or histone modification, to turn gene activity up or down.
And this isn't just theory. This is like fundamental biology now.
Oh yeah, established science.
And the sources really pointed to studies on mindfulness and meditation as clear examples of this link.
Right, because what's been found is pretty remarkable. Consistent practice doesn't just make you feel different.
It actually changes things biologically.
Yes, it measurably alters these epigenetic markers.
Yeah.
The research highlighted showed regular mindfulness can reduce markers linked to inflammation
How much?
by as much as 40% in some studies.
Wow, 40%. That's huge from just a mental practice.
It really is significant. It shows that by intentionally calming your mind, you're literally sending biochemical signals, instructions,
Yeah.
that tell certain genes, like those involved in stress and inflammation, to quiet down.
Okay, so direct evidence. Mind influences gene activity. Simple as that.
Really?
Well, not simple, but proven.
Proven at that level, yes. General mental state influencing general biological processes via epigenetics.
Right. But this is where some of the material we reviewed takes well, it feels like a pretty massive leap, doesn't it?
It does, moving from that general effect of, say, calmness to the idea of targeted specific influence.
Through focused intention, visualization.
Right, exactly. Intentional visualization. We already see this, High-level performers use it all the time.
Athletes visualizing the perfect race. Surgeons mentally rehearsing a complex procedure.
Musicians playing through a piece in their head, they're creating desired physical outcomes mentally first.
Because the brain responds so powerfully to that detailed, focused mental imagery, right? It activates similar neural pathways.
It does. And so the question raised by these sources is, could you take that power, that focused mental energy, and direct it even more precisely?
Like aiming it specifically at the tiny, intricate workings of your cells for renewal.
That's the provocative idea, yeah.
And the sources didn't just leave it there. They actually started naming potential biological targets for this kind of focused mental work.
They did get specific. One key target mentioned was telomerase.
Ah, okay. The enzyme that rebuilds telomeres.
That's the one. Telomeres are those protective caps on the ends of our chromosomes, and they naturally shorten as cells divide, which is linked to aging. Telomerase can rebuild them.
So the visualization idea here is,
The material suggested something like picturing telomerase as maybe a skilled artisan, carefully repairing and lengthening those telomeres, maintaining cellular vitality.
okay, I could picture that. What else?
Another one was PIRP1. Think of this as a key supervisor for DNA repair, a molecular repair worker.
Because our DNA gets damaged all the time just through living.
Constantly. And PRP1 is described as being right there on the front lines, finding breaks in the DNA strands and coordinating the repairs.
So the visualization for PRP1 might be like imagining it as a really vigilant guardian, scanning the DNA, quickly fixing any issues.
Exactly. Patching things up to keep the genetic code intact, enhancing genetic integrity through mental focus.
And there was a third one mentioned quite a bit, SOX2.
Yes, SOS2. This gene plays a role in keeping our adult stem cells, well, stem-like, keeping them ready and versatile.
Their internal repair team, basically.
That's a good way to think of it. SOX2 helps maintain that pool of ready-to-go stem cells that the body can use for tissue repair and regeneration.
So the idea would be that focused visualization might somehow support SOX2 expression. Keep that repair team well-stocked and ready.
That's the hypothesis presented, yes, aiming to keep the internal regenerative capacity robust.
Okay, but how? I mean, how could just thinking about these things, even really intensely, actually cause these specific biological changes? That feels like the biggest hurdle.
It does, and the material doesn't claim it's magic. It explores plausible biological pathways, building on things we already know connect the mind and body.
Like the stress response system.
Exactly. We know visualization techniques can influence stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, and those hormones directly impact inflammation, immune function, and the cellular repair processes themselves.
So influencing the system that influences the cell.
That's one potential route. Another pathway mentioned is the vagal nerve, part of our autonomic nervous system.
The rest and digest system.
Right. Practices that calm the mind and body, which can include focused visualization, are known to increase vagal tone.
And what does that do?
Higher vagal tone helps reduce inflammation. It stimulates immune responses involved in regeneration, and there's evidence suggesting it can influence those epigenetic switches we talked about earlier.
Ah, okay. So it's potentially leveraging known systems, but amplified or directed by this focused mental imagery.
That seems to be the line of reasoning. And importantly, the sources present visualization not as some innate talent, but as a skill, something you can develop.
Like practicing meditation or learning an instrument.
Exactly. Consistency, technique, they matter. The idea is the more you practice this focused visualization, the better you might become at directing that mental energy, perhaps honing the physiological response.
Which brings us to biofeedback. That seemed like a really interesting angle in the material.
Yeah, biofeedback as a potential way to sort of accelerate learning this mind-body control
So you'd be practicing the visualizations.
while getting real-time data back about your body's response, not just, say, heart rate or maybe brain waves, which we can already measure.
But potentially, down the line, maybe feedback on markers actually related to cellular activity, or even those epigenetic tags.
That's the more advanced future idea. Imagine seeing a direct readout showing how your mental focus is influencing, say, inflammation markers, or maybe even telomerase activity indicators.
That kind of feedback loop.
Wow.
It could potentially show you exactly which mental states, which images are creating the desired physiological shifts.
Allowing you to refine your technique with incredible precision, mastering that connection.
Which really leads us into the more speculative territory covered in the sources, doesn't it? The exciting possibilities, but definitely things needing a lot more research.
Absolutely. This is where we move towards the frontiers. The material discussed some pretty speculative training protocols.
Like what?
Things like visualization-driven epigenetic feedback loops, using future sensors, maybe wearables, that could actually measure specific epigenetic changes like the methylation status of the TERT gene, the one coding for telomerase.
And feeding that info back to you while you visualize.
Right. Or using deep hypnotic states, the idea being that maybe in those deeper trance-like states, visualization could access subconscious processes more directly, making the guidance of cellular functions more potent.
That sounds intense.
It does. There was also talk of using specific sounds or frequencies or even focused phrases like a regeneration mantra, maybe synchronized with certain brainwave patterns.
To try and align mental activity with cellular rhythms thought to favor regeneration.
That's the concept. And then perhaps the most profound and definitely the most speculative idea.
Go on.
Consciousness itself, acting as a direct epigenetic catalyst. The notion that pure awareness, focused intent, might influence cellular changes at a really fundamental level, beyond the pathways we currently understand.
Okay, that's way out there.
Right.
Fascinating to think about.
It is. And enabling these kinds of ideas, well, it requires technology that, frankly, mostly doesn't exist yet.
We're talking advanced epigenetic wearables, AI coaches that could personalize visualization techniques based on your biosignals.
Maybe immersive AR or VR simulators where you could visualize interacting with your cells in a virtual environment.
Or even things called biophoton resonance devices, trying to influence cellular energy fields. It starts sounding like science fiction.
It does lean that way. The sources also mention drawing inspiration from some unusual places, like trying to understand the epigenetic flexibility seen during embryonic development,
Can we mimic that somehow?
or looking at mystical traditions where altered states of consciousness are sometimes linked to seemingly anomalous physiological effects. Lots of outside-the-box thinking.
It's a huge conceptual leap, though, from calming the mind reduces inflammation to specifically telling your PRP1 enzyme to work harder in this particular region.
A massive leap. And while exploring these future ideas is exciting, the sources were also careful to ground things back in the established benefits of visualization, and importantly, to include some major caveats.
Which is crucial, because visualization, even without the sci-fi stuff, is already known to be beneficial, right?
Absolutely. Its benefits for mental health are widely recognized, reducing stress, anxiety, boosting confidence, promoting relaxation.
Hmm.
These are real, tangible effects.
Building emotional resilience, things many people use it for already.
And in sports medicine, its use is really well documented, helping athletes recover faster from injuries, stay mentally sharp while sidelined.
Building confidence for when they return to play, so the core practice has value.
Definitely. But it's a big, but the idea of using it for targeted epigenetic reprogramming,
Yeah.
that's where the sources urged caution. It's highly speculative.
And faces some serious challenges.
Big ones. There are biological constraints, for instance. You can't just turn telomerase way up indefinitely. There are risks associated with that, like potentially contributing to cancer growth.
Right, balance is key in biology.
And the sheer level of mental focus and disciplined practice likely required for these targeted effects might be incredibly demanding, more than just casual meditation.
Plus, we just don't have the tools yet to reliably measure these specific targeted effects inside cells in real time, do we?
Not widely, no. The measurement technology is a huge gap currently. So while the potential is intriguing, these ideas are really building on the known, modest, epigenetic shifts from general mindfulness.
And extrapolating quite significantly.
Exactly. That targeted aspect needs a lot of future validation.
And the sources made another really critical point too, didn't they?
Yes, a very important one. Exploring these mind-based approaches, no matter how advanced they might become, does not replace conventional medical care.
Or the basics. Healthy diet, exercise, sleep.
Precisely. This is presented as a potential complementary path for exploration, not a substitute for evidence-based medicine and healthy living.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here in this deep dive. It's been quite a journey.
It really has, from the solid science connecting the mind, the body, and the epigenome,
Through the proven benefits of visualization for things like stress reduction and performance.
all the way out to these speculative but really exciting frontiers. The idea of potentially using focused intention to consciously influence cellular renewal, maybe even at a genetic expression level.
Yeah. The consistent thread, though, woven through all the material, seems to be this. Your mental state, what's happening in your head, it isn't just subjective feeling.
No, it has real, physical, measurable consequences in your body, down to some of the most fundamental biological levels.
And that really leaves us with a pretty compelling thought, doesn't it? Something for you, the listener, to maybe mull over.
Mm-hmm.
If relatively simple practices like mindfulness meditation can demonstrably shift your gene expression towards wellness, what might the focused, intentional power of your mind unlock in the future of your own health?